What is the meaning of success? Let's examine this word and concept, considering our lives in the United States, in a cloistered corner of the world, and a biblical example of a successful person. Is a person with the most goods and the nicest home the highest measure of this word, success? The problem Yeah, oh, absolutely. The problem with isolating words in any language is that they are not complete enough vessels by themselves for the plethora of associations that can be formed around them. Now, if I ask you, is the person with the most goods and the nicest home show a high attainment of financial success, you could probably comfortably answer the question.
Sure.
The concept of success in contemporary Western society leans more towards financial success. I'm sure you recognize these people in the lower right corner. If you are in a group, and choose to discuss whether someone is successful, you may be talking about, say, the measure of the artistic and accomplishments or spiritual enlightenment. But more typically, you are talking about the measure of their net worth and income. Now, those who choose to focus their consideration on this question in more spiritual terms know that success is a more holistic concept, embracing financial, emotional, family, capacity for loving, teaching, and sharing. It also includes a notion of one's placement and relationship to matters that exceed our human considerations here, and placement in the universe. These are heady and sometimes uncomfortable questions, things to consider, especially those things that require our submission to greater authority, one outside our desires to control our environment. Moving on to what I mentioned, a biblical example. Was the biblical Job a success? He was a wealthy man with 7 sons and 3 daughters, a huge number of livestock, and, quote, very many servants, end quote. He was put to a series of tests and suffered greatly. He was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil, as quoted by God in Job 1:1-3. Unfortunately, he became the target of an exchange between God and Satan. God offers up Job as a blameless and upright man, but Satan replies, he's only that because God has blessed Job with every comfort and success, and that if these things are removed, that he will, quote, curse you to your face. Oh, now it's on. God decides he will allow Satan to attack Job to prove Satan wrong. Behold, all that he has in your hand, only against him. Do not stretch out your hand. That was the deal. So Satan gets to test Job. What follows are a series of horrific events. His livestock, servants, and children are all killed. Loathsome sores cover his body. And even his wife advises him, do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die. I remember that from years ago, thinking, wow, that's his wife. Even so, he does not curse God. A series of friends advise him on the state of man in relationship to God and to acknowledge that he has sinned somewhere and should figure it out and repent. Their advice is a series of soliloquies, empty of consolation, presented as if he were on trial. That's the boring part of the book. I remember that from studies at UCSB. Now, Job does question his circumstance and eventually receives a full dressing down from God, quote, out of the whirlwind, end quote. God's reply is that Job has no authority to question the workings of God. Job understands and replies, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who's this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore, I've uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Hear, and I will speak. I will question you, and you make it known to me. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, his human ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. Job 42, 2-6. Then the Lord restores the fortunes of Job. 7 new sons, 3 new daughters, and he died an old man. Several generations later, Job is not perfect, but he never curses God despite his seemingly unfair treatment. Yes, he's human and complains, but he is as good as it gets for a human being dealing with these circumstances. Job is a good example of holistic success. He is offered up by God as an example of an exemplary man to Satan and passes all tests. He's eventually blessed with restored financial fortune and additional sons and daughters. He's presented as a good example of a successful person. Can money buy happiness? I can speak from my experience of a 40-plus year career as a commercial broker. I've dealt with hundreds of people with extremely high net worth and income. And I can tell you from my viewpoint, money cannot buy you happiness, but it can help you be miserable in a better part of town. Did that joke fall flat? I don't hear anyone laughing. Okay, fine, we'll move on. In my experience, extremely wealthy people are not a happy, balanced group. I've known many. If you do not deal with whatever flaws you carry with you, they don't disappear with wealth. In fact, they appear to get worse as you are freed from constraints about neglecting growth and indulging in them. Since you can now afford to indulge in any unseemly activity or excess that you always had a weakness for, your integrity may appear to slip. When the constraints of resources and fear of judgment by your peers becomes less of a consideration, it is often not a pleasant sight. Of course, this is not always the case, but when temptation is magnified by abilities, it seems that you need to put a more determined focus on those things that make you a happy, balanced, successful person. Or it's more likely that you will succumb to your flaws and weaknesses as temptation has an easier foothold. Does that mean that poor people are inherently more virtuous? No. They are human beings that may carry the same flaws as a wealthy person. They're just less on display. The successful person cultivates enlightenment and growth in all aspects of their existence, as I've chosen to outline here. Spiritual, financial, love, taking care of their body, artistic things, and managing their time. Balance and a focus on God, love, blessings, serving others, and personal growth is the path to become a successful, enlightened, beautiful person.